Start just a little bit early. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Looks like we lost someone. Oh, she's backstage. Good afternoon. Welcome back, everybody. Hot Mic Cincy, Nathan Ivey with you, your humble host and moderator. Got the crew with us. Minus, so here she is, Alandes Powell's with. Hey, Alandes, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, Phil? How you doing, Phil?
Yeah, and I want to thank Alandes because I believe in last Friday's show, I saw a comment from her in the chat that said something to the effect, I can't believe it, but I actually agree with Phil Heimlich on this. And Alandes, I want to thank you for that. There's no reason that you should feel a sense of unbelief, but I appreciate it anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, and just know, I think I was on medicine that day, so I'm not even sure that I agree with you.
Every once in a while, he gets it right. Hey, Tarris, how you doing, sir?
That's a good one.
Doing well.
The elephant in the room. I love that. Kevin Aldridge, the voice of reason. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. And Alandes, we all have to medicate sometimes when listening to Phil.
Absolutely.
We all have our different prescription of choice when it comes to
You know, that's why often I ask Kevin on the show, I say, are you on your meds? So, yeah, I understand that. I get that. Sure.
I want to say happy Tuesday and hello to everybody in the audience, starting with Jerome. Good to see you, Jerome, and Pat. Hey, good to see you, family. Good to see you. Jerome writes, where is Nate? I'm right here. Black Art Speech writes, Alandes Powell, are you on today? Okay, she's here. David writes, good afternoon, everyone. Now, Wusi Simba, a.k.a. Black Lion, infamous talk radio caller for spanning multiple decades and many, many talk shows. He writes, good, what's good, everyone? Good to see you, Black Lion. Terry writes, good afternoon, everyone. Dina writes, good afternoon, everyone. Christian Horton's in the house. How you doing, Christian? He writes, good afternoon, crew. Regina writes, good afternoon. TNT, one of our crew members, writes, hello, everyone. Please like and share. I really appreciate that. Shahira writes, good afternoon, Hot Mic panel, and everyone here. Good to see you as well. Dina writes, Tarris came back with a tan. Looks the same to me, but you were on a little vacay, right?
Yeah, we were in the Bahamas. We just got back yesterday.
Oh, good. Hope you had a good time.
Yes.
Shahira writes, hey, Alandes, so good to see you on. Eloise is in the house. She writes, good afternoon, Nathan Ivey, Alandes Powell, and panel. Fanon Rucker, one of our crew members, writes, peace and blessings. Looking forward to the conversation. Yeah, popcorn out last Friday. That was hilarious. Tanika writes, good afternoon, Hot Mic crew and everyone checking in from beautiful Orlando, Florida. Crutha, thank you for the share. Really appreciate you. She writes, good afternoon, everyone. Caprice, good to see you. What's up, family? Writes, hello. Sierra's in the house. She writes, hello, Hot Mic crew. Good to see you. K.A. Thompson writes, Alandes Powell, hey, fave. Good. Well, let's jump straight into it. And let's start here locally. We know what's happening internationally. We'll get to that in a second, but let's start here locally. Locally, there was at least one story that took a lot of headlines and people were talking about it. There was what the media was calling a mass shooting at a venue on the east side of Cincinnati. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, 9 people were injured, none fatally. I don't have updates on all of them. Thoughts and prayers are with the families. I mean, I can only imagine. I've never been shot before. So I can only imagine what that's like. Hopefully they will all recover very quickly from their injuries. Authorities have arrested 2 people, 2, they have to be black men, at least that's the last that I saw, involved with the shooting. And I want to get your thoughts. I mean, are we addressing the causes of these type of instances, or are we just chasing suspects? I saw the mayor.
No. We're not doing the root causes thing again. Now, come on. Are we really
We
doing
got to start
that?
somewhere. We got to start somewhere. You can take it where you want to take it, but
you tell me, Nathan, what's the root cause of these guys who went in and shot up the place? Tell me the root cause.
You tell us. You tell us, Phil.
I'll tell you what it is, Phil.
Wants to get at the root causes. What's the root
I'll
cause?
tell you what the root cause is. It's guns. That's what the root cause of it is. It's guns. And, it's interesting. I was listening to, what some of the city managers' comments were and her comments about responsible gun ownership and all of that. And all of that is well and good. But the audience that you're aiming at, that you're talking about in these instances, are not responsible gun owners. They're not people who are going to buy guns and use them responsibly and store them and lock them up and, only shoot them at the range. I mean, that message falls on deaf ears, because if those folks were responsible gun owners, they wouldn't be in locations shooting up folks. And so this comes back to the whole gun reform law debate. You got to get a handle on these guns, and there's no foolproof way. You're never going to be able to keep all guns out of the hands of bad actors, but there certainly is more that we can do to limit the amount of guns and that flow into our neighborhoods and our communities. And that's the only cause to it. You can talk about a lot of other ways to solve crime that get to discussions that Phil hates to talk about, like root causes. But the biggest cause that you need to do is somehow or another limit the amount of guns that you have on the street and people's access to it, so that you can maybe hope to make it a little bit harder for these bad actors to get their hands on guns. But even having said that, there's no foolproof way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you that's a big thing, but it's also every time you dig deep into each matter, it's something different. So it's something different that caused it. And sometimes the root cause, like there's the gun, having access to guns, all of that is one of the causes. But I think everything is different. So like when it was that alcohol fuel matter that happened, that everyone tried to turn into the big brawl, right? Everyone understands that the root cause had to be with a lot of drinking and a lot of things that just exploded. And it's different than probably what caused this one. So I just think that we're trying to put it all in one bucket, and it's not all in one bucket, but it does start with guns, because you can't shoot. It's this thing. I think it's hard to shoot someone without a gun.
Phil, you jumped in there. What do you think?
Well, truthfully, I thought when I heard root causes, I was going to hear the, they grew up in poverty, they didn't have a good education. And so I'm glad at least so far, I haven't heard that. Okay.
It's coming.
All right. I figured, actually, I hadn't
Let's
thought
talk
of the
about
I don't know if
Charles.
What's that?
Let's talk about, but let's start off with the gun.
Okay, I'll start with the gun.
Yeah.
First of all, I actually agree. I'm not going to say that guns necessarily cause this, but I would actually agree with you guys. I have always felt, and by saying this, I will never have a shot at in a Republican primary, but I have never understood why we license cars, but we don't license guns. I mean, they're both deadly. Okay, so why is it? Why is it you have to get a license? Nobody would say, "Oh no, you ought to be able to drive a car without a license." Nobody would say that. I don't see what the difference is with the gun myself. I'm not going to necessarily, whether we call it a root. I don't know if I'd call it a root. I don't know root cause or not, but I certainly agree that you ought to be able to get a license. And I'll tell you something. that whole thing about, well, the bad guys always have guns. Well, think about this. Think about the domestic violence situations and the mass shootings. Okay, those are people who do something terrible more on the spur of the moment. It isn't a well planned out thing. And I actually think if you require people to fill out a form, even though there's some bureaucracy, fill out the form and get the license, the chances are those mass shooters aren't, they're not thinking that way. They just get this crazy idea. And the fact that at that time, then they don't have the gun and they probably don't have the wherewithal to even go through the process of filling out the forms, I think it would save a lot of lives.
Yeah.
Can I jump in a little bit?
Yeah, go right ahead.
And talk about the culture and being that age. I think the guys they're under 30. Let's just say under 30. So I know when I was under 30 and I was influenced by music and going out and going to the club, and I knew anytime I go out, something like that could happen, especially if I've got different DJs and different people hanging out and different cliques hanging out together. At any time, stuff could pop off. You know that when you go out. So this isn't surprising to me. It's just something that, and I'm just, when I heard about it, I was glad that nobody got fatally, it's just people didn't die. Nobody died. But this is something that potentially could be blown up into something that is something that happens all the time. Somebody's ego gets bruised. It could be over a female. I bet root cause as we get down to this, it'll be probably root causes. It would be a female, somebody beefing over a female or beefing over.
You're gonna have some trouble with that, there, Tarris.
I'm just saying that generally that's
the
what
Me Too people aren't gonna be happy with that.
From being experienced in this field of going to clubs and being in nightclubs from age 17 to whenever I decided not go when I was like 35. When situation, if I was still in that lifestyle, I could have been at that place that night. And so I know probably some female or something like that, or somebody ego got bruised. It went beyond fisticuffs. He felt like he needed to go get a gun and shoot up the place, and it's fueled with music. They're probably listening to shoot 'em up, bang bang music in the club. If it ain't dance, booty shaking, it's shoot 'em up, bang bang, money drunk. I mean, that's just the culture of the music, and when you're mixing that with alcohol, and it's what happens.
So Tarris, before we go there, I want to go back just a little bit because I want to go to what Phil said first. Because first you need a gun. And Phil, when you mentioned the car industry versus the gun industry, let's not forget the NRA lobbies for this because they want the guns.
I agree.
Yeah. So that piece is very hard to align that with the car industry because the car industry isn't lobbying for people to actually have cars without license and just to make sure everyone has one in their hand. So I think there's a fundamental difference there.
Well,
So
there's a political, what you're saying is there's a political difference, but I think, do you agree with me that the principle of needing a license to have a dangerous weapon applies to both?
I am saying it applies to both, but we understand why it's not in both because lobbies have, money, the NRA, all of that.
There's one more reason.
Go ahead.
There's one more reason. Just real quickly, I'll let you guys get back into it. But Christian makes it. There's one more reason, which is this distinction between the analogy that Phil gave, which I agree principally with you, Phil, is that the right to have a gun is expressly in the Constitution.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, yeah, but I think the Supreme Court in these decisions that the gun decisions, they won't let, like I think DC prohibited people from having handguns. That they said violates the Second Amendment. But they have ruled in several cases that reasonable restrictions, are permissible. So I think requiring a license doesn't violate the Second Amendment.
I don't think so either, but I think we understand how all of that works. And then what happens is those same people use that information to drive conversations like this. And how they did it is when you drop off guns and drugs to a community, and then you sit back and say, let's see what's going to happen. This is the things that have happened.
Who's dropping off the drugs and the guns?
Let's go back. So when drugs and guns infiltrated our Black communities. We didn't know how to make them. We didn't even know how to shoot them in some regards. Actually, most of my friends, who I do have Republican friends, they're just not MAGA, and they didn't vote for they're just Republicans. Most of my Republican friends and white friends have always told me, when I ask them how many guns they have, if they know the number, in their mind, they don't have enough because they were raised on guns, shooting a lot of them. I never had a gun in my hand until I was over 45. And I didn't even want it. My husband wanted me to know how to shoot a gun. And I still won't go to a range. It was just what I was brought up. So what I'm trying to make sure you understand is, I know we didn't drop them off to ourselves. And Phil, I realize you're smart enough to know that.
Well, it's supply and demand. There was a demand. There was a demand in the community, obviously, or by people, and so people who sell drugs and guns sold them. So what do you? I don't understand what you're saying.
Drugs and guns was made extremely accessible to the Black community. Does anyone disagree with that outside of Phil?
Well, is that because there was a demand by, drug dealers and gun dealers any other seller?
Phil, there's some evidence. Phil, there's some evidence to suggest that it was actually a part of a strategic political campaign. In fact, ironically, even going back to the Iran-Contra affair, you remember that, Phil, I'm quite sure, with Oliver North, and where the United States was involved in arms dealing and drugs with the Contras. And a lot of those weapons and drugs were funneled into United States cities, urban centers where Black people lived and resided. And it was done intentionally. So do a little homework, Phil. Don't just sit there.
I think you're a little no. I think on the Iran Contra, hold it. We gave, if I recall, the guns. We gave money to, I think it was Iran. Okay.
Yes,
that's true. Then used the money to give weapons to the Contras. Okay, what does that have to do with?
Yes, but there's also again, go back and do your homework and research. There was a piece of that where the drugs and some of the arms that were going to the Contras were also coming into the United States under Reagan. And again, go back and do it. This is not conspiratorial stuff. This is stuff that's been reported on that shows the connection of our government funneling drugs and guns into urban centers in the United States.
And when you create
who were the individuals in the administration that were responsible for funneling these drugs and guns into the inner city? Give me a name.
Prescott Bush.
Yeah, there's many people who are involved. I mean, that's factually true. But I mean, in terms of the gun part, it's like when you create an illegal and illicit drug trade, right? Then the gunplay, the need to protect it comes with it. So
who's the you? Who's the you you're talking about?
The CIA did it. I mean, what they're talking about is factual. The CIA, the U.S. government doing Iran-Contra, they were selling drugs and funneling into Black neighborhoods and then taking that and then buying weapons down with the Contras. But what I'm telling you is, you asked where the gunplay came from. When you flood Black neighborhoods, economically depressed Black neighborhoods with illicit drugs, it creates the drug trade. The violence comes with that. That's the point I think they're trying to make.
And then take no jobs and not have any jobs, and then take the Black man and give them crack cocaine to make money. Come on, Phil. This is an easy formula of over the years.
I've talked with I've interviewed a bunch of authors. I'll make some suggestions as some literature, some books you might want to check out, to catch you up on it, just if you're interested in it. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence or anything. I'm just saying there's a lot of literature about this that's just out there that if you want to pick up on it. But I agree with Kevin and Alandes and everybody's saying. I mean, there's some people who feel like if you blame guns, then you are overlooking the human part of it. For me, we just got to be real about it. You can't trust everybody with a weapon. It's just what it is. Everybody is not trustworthy. Not all humans are trustworthy with weapons. There's some people, quite honestly, that have a certain mentality and they're taking it into these clubs. Like, I've been to all kind of clubs around Cincinnati. You name all of them. I went to all of them. I was at the House of Love, loved it. All the hole in the walls. I did it all. I never took a weapon with me because I always felt like If I had to take a weapon with me, I'm just not going. It's just, but that's me. There's some people that have a different mentality, and they've got their own edge. They might be living a certain lifestyle. They might be a part of the drug trade. As I understand it, these two individuals who have been arrested, both of them were on disability, meaning they weren't supposed to have weapons because they both had prior drug charges. So they might still be in that game, right? But my mentality would be, I just wouldn't go. Other people, they'll go anyway, and it's like whatever happens, they're going to deal with it with a weapon. So it's a mentality, and we have to understand that not everybody can be trusted with everything. Not everybody can be trusted with a weapon.
So would you agree, as far as those two guys, that if they had to have applied and paid for a license, they might not have guns at that,
No.
that night?
No, they
I
probably would've got
disagree
them
with
illegally.
that, and that's why I said
got 'em off the street.
you're assuming these two gentlemen got their guns through legal means. What I'm
Right.
suggesting to you is and this is documented. I mean, you can get guns off the street without ever having to go in front of any legitimate seller to get it. It's the ease with which, if you got the money, that you can get a gun today is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's what I'm saying. Like, there's no foolproof way that regulation is needed, no doubt, but there's still no foolproof way unless you are going to suffocate and cut off this illegal flow of guns that come into our communities. And that is, I've asked police this. I've asked people in government. I'm like, where are these guns coming from, and how are they getting into our communities? And either they know and are not going to say, or they just don't know, either of which is a problem, because you can't seem to cut off the spigot.
Yeah.
And that's where I can kind of get with some people who are like, yeah, even if you do gun reform laws, it's not going to stop the problem. That's not entirely untrue, because of the illicit flow of weapons that you have come in.
It
But that
depends on how
doesn't mean that
aggressive
we
you
still
try.
shouldn't do everything we can to make it difficult for the wrong people to get it, and for responsible people shouldn't have a problem going through the process.
Right. That
We
part.
should be making it just as difficult as they're trying to make voting. But let me say this really quick, because then you have to unpack the next situation, because here's the next thing that was in place, that is supposed to be in place. And that is that they shouldn't have been able to get a gun into the club, period. And so many times they have these gun things. And I know when I go in places, I have a pacemaker. I shouldn't have let Phil know that, because he'll probably be trying to get me really upset. But I have a pacemaker. When I go in, I can't go through that. And do you know how many times they'll tell me it's not even on? So there is this requirement that they should have something to actually pick up and make sure you're not bringing guns even into a club. I think that's true, right?
Kevin, have you heard anything about how they got the gun in? I mean, I've heard something on the back end that they got them in through the back.
I don't know. I'm just saying there's this.
Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, there's that responsibility too. I think that's supposed to be the establishments to help keep you safe. And I just wonder how much is going on there, and are we holding those people accountable?
You mean because they didn't have a detector, or they didn't pat them down enough coming in?
It's their job to make sure no guns are in their club. I'm just asking.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things I've been hearing from people kind of in response to this, that have been critical of perhaps of the venue and the security that was on hand, to exactly your point, Alandes, that where were the detectors, where was the patting down and sort of searching of folks, if you come through there and things go off. These are standard things that you see if you go to any just about any venue, Heritage Bank Arena, Bengals game, whatever. They do have those detectors and things to make sure that you aren't coming through with weaponry. And so there apparently had to be some sort of security breakdown there for this to happen, because the shooting actually happened inside, not outside.
Right.
So if I may make a request, and I've mentioned this before, but one of my closest friends is a guy named Chris Yaw. I met him when he was a reporter 20, 30 years ago for Channel 12. He is an Episcopal priest in Detroit, and he has I believe, about the largest gun, which he totally initiated, gun buyback program, one of the largest in the country. And they even have this huge device, I forget what they call it, that crushes the guns. They create him a gift card for the guns, and he's been written up in the New York Times, been on TV and stuff. I would just recommend we might want to have him on here sometime. I think he'd provide a kind of a real interesting perspective. And this is a guy who's actually really doing something
Yeah,
about
I'm
it.
with it. It just seems to me like they always want to do buybacks in Black communities.
Well, they do, but they say it doesn't
This isn't a
work.
Black community. Where he is. It happens. I said Detroit, but he's in some kind of I think a suburb, Bloomfield Hills or something like that. So it's actually not in the inner city.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we've talked about that before, even at the city. Some people think it works, some people doesn't, but I think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah,
Is there any way we can go back to now Troy's Tarris's point?
Sure.
Okay. Because I think
say that again, Alandes. I didn't hear what
I
you
want to
said.
go now to like the fourth item in my mind that Tarris brought up had to do with rap music. And I want to be very clear when we say rap music in our culture. Okay. So first of all, music and culture, if you think about like even how people show up in country music, it is all about our experiences. And so what people started rapping about was the things we were experiencing. And what we were experiencing was guns and drugs that have been dropped off in our community to kind of like upset our community. And what people use in their culture to talk about is normally what's in their community. Now you hear more rap music about, or more music now about pedophiles and stuff in their community. And you're starting to hear more things in the country community about shooting up schools and why you shouldn't. And so we talk about what we go through. So when you blame it even on rap music and all of that, and there's certain things in rap music, I listen to them and I promise you, I still didn't shoot people. So I do understand that, but I want you guys to understand that part of our, I won't call it culture, part of our rap music is about our lived experiences. And that still has to go back to what people purposely did to destroy the Black community. Don't move off of that and don't act like we did it to ourselves, Tarris, and act like now we're living what people did their best to do to us. And I do think it's our responsibility to change that. So I'm not like just blaming, but I think people should take their ownership and then we should figure out how to actually help. If that's
so I think Tarris hit on, I'm only going to disagree with Alandes slightly here because I think Tarris was right about culture is a big thing. But I oftentimes think when we talk about culture, we want to assign it to African Americans. Look, the problem with our American culture is that we have a culture of violence in America that has been a part of this country since its inception. The violence of slavery, the violence of war, the violence of a lot of things that America has been engaged in, both here domestically and, overseas in terms of some of the things that our country has done. So violence is nothing foreign to American culture. So it has nothing to do with black, white, or whatever. Violence is as American as apple pie in this country. And that's something that we don't like to talk about much because we come up with justifications for certain types of violence and condemn other types of violence. But to Alandes's point, I think the violence that has been perpetuated against Black people in this country, bred in our neighborhoods and communities. I mean, look, when you get a bunch of poor people who are struggling with no way out, I don't care what color they are, there's probably going to be crime and violence involved. And that's what you get when you get into a lot of urban centers or out in Appalachia. You see violence of all sorts. It may just manifest itself in different ways. So in Appalachia, they may not be shooting each other, but they might be doing some other form of violence to each other out there. That is almost goes hand in hand in what you see largely in large impoverished areas or in community crime and violence. And unfortunately, drugs and a lot of other social ills tend to breed in those areas. So we got to get out of this notion of trying to assign a color to these sorts of things. These are problems that are American in nature. We just sometimes like to ascribe the narrative to certain races of people to make it seem like it's just us, but it's not. If you look at behaviors and you look across the statistics, there are a lot of commonalities when you get into poor, struggling areas, whether they're black, white, or whatever.
The Trump administration is currently trying to get the Supreme Court to have the right to deny gun ownership to people who smoke marijuana. Do you think that that's a good move? They are literally in court right now pushing for that.
It's the alcohol industry that lobbying to do that. So there it is. The alcohol industry is putting a lot of money into making sure that the cannabis industry gets a lot of kickback, and it discourages people from going toward cannabis for whatever reason, because alcohol industry has taken a hit. In the past year, alcohol sales have went way down. 2, 4, 5 years, the numbers have went way down, and they've only had to been able to offset the numbers by the sale of not alcohol, but THC flavored drinks. So most of the distributing companies who sell alcohol, they have been able to subsidize that money they're losing, because the majority of people ain't drinking like they used to. For whatever reason, health conscious, the generation below us see the health dangers. I don't know if they've seen, like, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Our kids seen us who have glorified alcohol through music, culture, just being, I'm honest with myself. If I can't be honest with nobody else, I can be honest with myself. And I know what the music did to me. I know what the culture did to me. And I didn't come from it, but I was engulfed in it. So, but I know that more people are getting off of alcohol and moving toward marijuana. So in order for the alcohol industry to combat that, they're not going at it the way of trying to do alcohol. They're going at it this way of promoting, working with legislators to push laws that prevent people from coming forward with getting medical marijuana license. Because a lot of my friends are just going to get it from the streets. They say, we're going to get it from the streets because I want to keep my gun, or they'll have their wife get the medical marijuana card for them. I mean, there's going to be workarounds, but this is from that headline that you put up there, it's strictly a lobbyist political move from the alcohol industry to combat the cannabis industry.
That may be true, but do you agree with it? Do you agree with what the Trump administration is trying to do right now? Because they're pushing for it.
More people are violent on alcohol and will go do something more on alcohol than on weed. So I do not. So no, I don't agree with it. I think it's a ridiculous law. I think it's ridiculous. You should be able to, if you can take Percocet and Ambient and all that kind of stuff legally and have a drug, marijuana shouldn't be be in there at all. It shouldn't have nothing to do with it.
Actually, if you listen, I just was listening or reading what the members of the court were, including some of the so-called conservatives, and they were basically saying, hey, how do you show us the evidence that people on marijuana are more likely to shoot somebody than people than not? And I thought that's a pretty good question to ask. And I think there's been a long time hypocrisy. And it bothered me when I had to prosecute drug cases, truthfully, because, I mean, okay, it's if somebody smokes marijuana, and it used to be you were going to prison for that. And I would even say for the harder drugs, too. I mean, if you're going to basically say that we're going to outlaw this, okay, then you got to do the same for alcohol, because as most of us know, the economic and medical damage from alcohol is certainly been shown to be far worse than marijuana, and also probably worse than a lot of the other drugs.
There's a silver lining in this, though, whether you agree with it or not, is that if you look beyond it, it's that the Trump administration agrees with the fact that there are some people in this country who shouldn't have access to guns. That's a good point, that they at least recognize that. Now, instead of saying that it shouldn't be marijuana users, let's try to divert that attention in other areas where, absolutely there are people who shouldn't have access to guns, or better yet, certain types of guns that shouldn't be accessible to people. So if you think that somebody who smokes weed isn't someone who deserves to have access to a gun, that's a good starting point. I'm glad that the Trump administration, while I disagree with the group they're targeting, I do agree with the idea that there probably are certain groups and certain types of weapons that shouldn't be accessible, they shouldn't have public access to it. So let's start there and work our way up to something that's more reasonable than targeting marijuana users.
We do have to think about that, but we can't forget the fact, because I think this is important, is that when drugs first infiltrated our communities, it showed up as such a criminal act, right? And it just so many people ended up spending their lives in jail because of it. When that changed over and we start talking about meth, it became a medical situation. And it became a medical situation in a big way. And I believe addiction, we all know addiction is real. There's no one on this phone call who has not had it impact their life in some kind of way. But we know how people show up and treat people versus how we were treated. And then fast forward. And when I've asked that question very pointedly to some very powerful people, they came out and said it was the media who decided to do that because the media rules the world. It's how it helped us think. So that piece is important. Anytime we start talking about, I'm not just talking about this administration, of them saying someone shouldn't have the guns, we still owe it to understand who they're targeting, why they're targeting that community, and who it impacts the most. So although I agree with you, I still think you have to back up and say, okay, so who they saying doesn't deserve a gun and how would that show up? So there's still more questions to ask, but I do agree that it's great to be having this conversation.
Yeah, I think the enforcement of the laws have always been racially discriminatory because even when they were hitting up Black people on the charges when marijuana was illegal, studies showed that Black people and white people used marijuana roughly at about the same rate, but Black people were the only ones who were getting arrested for it at the clip that they were. And so we know that there's been a history of racial discrimination when it comes to the enforcement of these laws and who they're targeting. So yeah, if you're talking about doing blanket marijuana users can't get access to guns, I don't think it'll pass because there are a whole lot of white folks who smoke weed too.
If anybody wants to do a deep dive, it's a movie called Reefer Madness, and it goes through the whole story about, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this white man, prohibition was over, so he had to target something. So he targeted marijuana because his old lady was out at jazz clubs, and he was mad because she was leaving with the Black jazz singers, and they to go smoke weed. This is something from I think it's called Reefer Madness, and he was mad. So when they had to pass prohibition, he said, "I'm going to target marijuana and give it racial undertones." Called it marijuana, but to be racist toward Mexican, to people with Mexican descent. Started targeting, saying it made the jazz musicians play, have magical powers when they smoked it, but really they were lame. And their old ladies were leaving with the jazz musicians after the jazz musicians because they were going after a partying with them. So that was what happened. So they got mad whenever they say liquor's legal now. So we got to target somebody now. So we're going to target the Blacks and the minorities. And that's how it started. It was called Reefer Madness. I can't remember that name.
Maybe we should show Reefer Madness on this show sometime. So, maybe it may be a good historical kind of thing,
We could just post a link. People could check it out at their leisure. But one more, just a little bit of here. So on this topic. So look, I kept seeing this over and over again. I got to call out the media. CPD, 2 arrested after mass shooting at East End. I saw that everywhere. Mass shooting. Is it just me or it just felt like it was overly emotional? And then there's a part of me, while technically they may be accurate in using it, it seems like we don't have enough information here. Because when I see mass shooting, it makes me feel like multiple people were targeted, as opposed to maybe there were 2 people shooting each other and people just got unintentionally injured. And it just felt like, once again, local media whipping up the emotion, conjuring up the emotion, trying to make people feel like anywhere you go, you could just randomly get caught up in something. Is it just me? But what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's just you. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it is just you, Nathan, because technically the way they track gun shooting statistics, and everybody does this, even what is it, Anytown or Every Town, I can't remember what the name of the organization is that tracks such shootings, is mass shootings, I think by definition are defined as anything that involves the shooting, death, or injury of 4 or more people. I believe that's the number. So in this case, you had 9. So it is, whether you want to say technically correct or whatnot, according to those who track such statistics, this would be categorized as a mass shooting, whether you were targeting all 9 people or not. It comes down to the number of folks who were shot.
Yeah, I admitted that. Yeah, technically they got it right, but practically, emotionally, right? We don't even know if 9 people were actually targeted. So like I'm saying, if this is a mass shooting, I remember.
But does that matter? Does it matter whether they? It doesn't really matter whether they were targeted or not.
As to why it matters.
No, the shooter was shot 3 times, right? I think one of the shooters.
The shooter was one of the victims, correct?
Yeah, the shooter was shot 3 times, and I don't know if they were shooting at each other. I don't know. I do know that when you say mass at first, you think someone just went out and intentionally is where our brain goes and shot up a place.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you're reacting to, because that doesn't seem to be the matter. It seems like it was about 1 or 2 people shooting at each other. And so that's where I think the whole mass word is.
But y'all are making somebody responsible for where your mind goes. And I say
you didn't let me finish.
Again, that a writer is not responsible, or anybody who relays information is not responsible for where you take your mind to.
I know.
They absolutely are responsible.
You didn't let
me.
They
are responsible.
Listen,
go right ahead,
you didn't let me finish. I said that's where our mind goes to. I said it. And then you didn't let me finish to say, but definitionally, what you shared is kind of where the writer probably went using that language. But here's the second thing. The writer is smart enough, and I'm going to assume you guys are, to know where the public's mind is going to go. So even though you say you're not responsible for it, you are.
They are. They
Alandes, I can tell you, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I don't care what you do. You can't account for, like, I always say this. People talk about bias in the media, but they never consider the bias that they bring to whatever it is that you read. You read things through your lens of bias. So no matter how I write it, you're going to interpret it through the lens you want to see it through. And so this is how you can get criticism from people on the right and the left who are reading the exact same thing because they read it through their lens. This is why I say it doesn't matter what the writer's intention was. It never does. What matters is how the reader interprets it. And that's always the case.
Okay.
The writer can set a tone, though, and a writer can frame. The writer can frame it up and say this is their opinion and frame it in certain ways to set a tone to people who aren't educated enough.
A writer doesn't have it. A news writer doesn't have
educated enough to go to a class and say that people are going to write. You have to be a critical thinker, and if you haven't been through a critical thinking class and taught this, like somebody who's not even college educated. High school diploma has not been taught that writers write from their own lens, and they're reading it verbatim. Because when I was out of town and I seen mass shooting in Cincinnati, and then I come back, it's just a club fight. You know what I'm saying? That the framing, I can see the framing. It's the responsibility of the media to frame it right.
Absolutely, because what this writer could have, and again, we just having a conversation. Mm-hmm. Far be it for me to tell a writer what to do.
Wait, hold on. Did you write it, Kevin? Because we don't want to be just.
No, I didn't write it. I mean, I'm just bringing my expertise of 30 years of doing this and interacting with the public to just say, I hear what y'all are saying, but I'm telling you, there's no way around it, because
there's a way around it.
There is not a way around it. There's not a way around it, because you're going to get criticism no matter how you frame it.
Not necessarily.
And this is a criticism that the media gets regardless with stories. We get villainized for, somebody will say, well, look at how the media framed this story, right? Whether it's somebody who agrees with what you're writing or disagreeing. That's why I'm saying it all comes from the vantage point of the person. And somebody is always going to nitpick and have an issue. You
Yeah,
framed
you
it
may
this
be
way
right about
versus that way. You said
Maybe.
this versus that. You use woke language versus cancel culture language. I live this every day. I'm telling you guys.
Yeah.
It's a
Whoever-
no-win scenario.
Oh, there's definitely a win scenario here, and I'll tell you what it is. And I'm not even a writer, because I think that there's not enough information to really ascertain. This is just me, because when I first read it, I'm thinking mass shooting. Somebody's out here targeting multiple people. Like, that's not necessarily what happened here. Again, nobody really knows. We don't know what happened here. The writer of this headline could have simply said 9 people were injured.
So Nathan,
That's it.
Let me say this.
Hold on. The writer could have simply took the word mass out and simply said 9 people were injured.
Is that
To
what it
use the
was,
word
Nathan?
mass,
By definition. By definition, was it a mass shooting? By definition, was it a mass shooting, Nathan? Answer that question. By definition, was it a mass shooting?
Technically, yes.
No, not technically. By
I've said it
definition,
3 times.
was it a mass shooting?
Technically, yes. Practically, no.
Okay.
Emotionally,
Then
no.
there is no practice. We deal with specificity in media.
No, you don't deal
Accuracy.
with specificity. The more you talk, the more I realize now that the writer of this headline had an option. They could have just said 9 people were injured, but they wanted to get the most salacious headline, right? Because I understand it. We're in a news cycle. Everybody's competing. They wanted to get the most salacious headline to get people to click. And in doing so, it's the point I keep making, that the media has a responsibility to not keep throwing gasoline on every single shooting. They don't even know what happened yet. They don't know. We don't know whether 9 people were targeted. In 2017, about 67 people were shot at a Las Vegas concert. A guy got up inside of a hotel and was firing down with a high caliber rifle. They called that a mass shooting. He was actually targeting people. That's a mass shooting. That's not the same as somebody going into a club. I get into a beef with you. We're shooting at each other and other people unintentionally get injured. They are not the same.
In your opinion. And that's all it is.
Is that the same to you, though? In your
That's,
opinion?
no, because
Okay,
technically,
so
technically, by definition, it was a mass shooting.
You
have the opinion that you don't like that terminology.
So
That
let
is an
me ask-
opinion.
Okay, so let me ask you
It's our
this.
opinion.
We
Do
all-
you agree with me?
Do we
I'm
all
saying
agree?
you're entitled to your opinion. That don't make it
And
right.
so are you. We have the same opinion.
No,
Kevin.
what I'm telling you is that there's the media's obligation is to always do with specificity and accuracy. Whether you like that specificity or accuracy or not is not a part
This is
of
not
what
accurate.
of our considerations.
Okay.
This
So
is
let me-
not accurate.
Okay, so let me ask you this. It's a question. So we agree that media is written by people, and that every person, regardless of who you are, we have bias, and that there's this thing called intention versus what shows up. And that if you decide your intention is to do it this way and you want to use mass, you can, because it actually fits the definition. But could that same writer have decided not to use mass and it would have still passed by and got in this article? That's my question.
Alandes, you could say that about anything. I could have chose to use the word
So you
is
do?
versus,
Okay.
I could have chose
So
to
you
use the
could-
word is versus was.
No,
That
this
don't
is
matter.
I'm not
in any given
asking.
state.
No, I'm not asking in that regard. I'm asking in the regard that no matter what, it has to go through editing, right? Someone
Sure.
edits. Okay, so I'm asking if that person would have chosen different language, would it still have?
But why would they have chosen different language,
No,
Alandes?
Okay, so let's
Answer
do this.
that question. Why
Okay,
choose
let me do
different
this.
language?
Let me say it this way.
Tell you
So,
why.
I think maybe we could go out and see if they've ever used different languages, because they might have felt, to someone else's point, based on what they knew, it wasn't a mass shooting. It was 2 people shooting with some innocent bystanders. Who knows? I'm just asking, do they have the ability to have shown up that way? From being a writer at the paper, with your experience, could they have used something else and it still passed the test? That's my only question.
Like I said, you could say that in any case, and this is my point, Alandes. You're trying to sit here and nitpick every usage of word that media. Yes, absolutely.
Not.
You could say that with anything. I could choose different words all the time in anything that I write about, whether it's a mass shooting, whether it's a drug deal, whether it's politics. This is what we go through every day, where people want to try to parse our word selection and say you should have said this or used that. And what I'm saying is, no matter what you use, somebody is going to criticize you. They're going to say you weren't sensitive enough. They're going to say you were too sensitive. They're going to say you were pandering, or they're going to say that you were. This is, I'm just telling you.
Kevin,
I get
how you guys right now. Your voice now is not. Listen, your voice right now is not the voice of reason, because what you're doing
it's the voice of accuracy.
Yeah, and that's what I want to get at. I want to get on the fact that you get to make choices of what you put in the paper and write. And part of it is you want people to react to it and read it. Case in point, factual.
People are going to read that story regardless.
Hold on. Case in point, because you still in the background have something you're trying to drive. It is something you're because if you're writing and nobody,
people don't read that story regardless of whether mass shooting appeared in the headline or not. 9 people. This is the ridiculousness of what you and Nathan are talking about. 9 people were shot. You think people aren't going to read a story about 9 people who were shot, whether it included the words mass shooting or not? This is what I'm saying. This is
here's what I would say to you.
Of the depths of which you try to go to argue these points.
Here's what I would say to you.
Instead of talking about 9 people who were shot, you want to villainize or try to make the media a scapegoat because they use the word mass shooting.
Okay,
we spent 20 minutes talking about mass shooting, not 9 people shot. That's the ridiculousness of this conversation.
Okay, but hold on. We were reacting to a word, and I guess you're saying we shouldn't. It's okay. It's not, but I'm going to be honest about writing and how people do it. You know, recently I was blessed enough to put my op-ed out. And what they put, I never even used that kind of word. They put at the top of my op-ed that Cincinnati likes Black art, but Cincinnati doesn't like Black artists. I don't give a crap about liking people. It's not my love language. I never said it. And it actually made the article that I wrote, people thought was
just to clarify, Kevin, I've submitted a lot of I've submitted a lot of op-ed pieces to numerous newspapers. Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but the writer doesn't control the headline. Am I right?
That's
because the headline is controlled by whoever the person in charge is. It isn't the writer, just so we all know that.
No, but just so you understand is that I wrote the article. Everything in the article was exactly what I wrote. That headline did not even relate to the article I wrote. It was almost like clickbait. And I'm like, why would they do that? I let it go. I never even called. I actually just said, this is what I had people call me and say they were scared to read it when they saw that I said Cincinnati didn't like Black artists. And I was talking about something completely different. So I've been there. That's all I'm saying is there still is an attention that the newspaper or whoever, whether it's the writer or the editor, is trying to get. And sometimes that doesn't align to what really happened. And in this, I get you saying you could use mass because it was still the truth definitionally. And it just showed up a little more different when you get to reading what potentially happened. It is not to hold you more accountable because still at the end of the day, 2 people shot up the place and that's who's responsible.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, I mean, I don't want to further traumatize people. See, the reason why you can have a city like Cincinnati where crime is down, but then everybody's fear about crime is up is the media, period. It's the way they report the stories, the frequencies, the headlines, and that's just what it is. And so who wants to live in a constant state of fear? Nobody. This could have simply been written and said, listen, 9 people were injured. The mass part was used, in my humble opinion, I'm no writer. In my humble opinion, it was clickbait. And I get it. I understand you got to do what you got to do. It's a crowded, digital space out there, but let's not act like it's not what it is and that it doesn't contribute to people's fear about crime. It does. Fear can reshape a city faster than the crime can because everybody's afraid that if you go downtown and you go to the East End, you might get caught in the crossfire, which statistically is not true. And that's just what it is.
I just think I'll just say I don't agree with that at all, because
What part don't you agree with?
whether the words mass shooting, what people are afraid
Words
of is
matter.
not the words mass shooting. What people are afraid of is that 2 people went into a club and shot 9 people. And this notion that the words mass shooting create more fear than the facts about what happened, I think is just, I just don't think.
Can I ask you a question then?
Yeah.
Kevin?
Yeah.
So you and I both know, we talked about this. We've been talking about it for a while now. So we've been doing this podcast, that crime is down. Well, if crime is down in Cincinnati, why is so many people's sensitivity about crime so high?
Because of stories like this. I mean, look,
Let's move on.
the media did not.
That's all we need.
Look,
That's all we
here's
need.
the thing. This is the typical shoot the messenger thing. The media did not take these 2 men down to Riverfront Live and tell them to shoot 9 people. And this is where I say, like, people's anger and all of this is misdirected. It's like you're saying, like, oh, the media is the bad guy for reporting on what 2 people did, which was shoot 9 people.
No one said that the bad guy, Kevin.
You about that.
No one said the media is the bad
scared,
guy.
Not some headline. That's
Here's
what
I'm saying.
It's not that the media is the bad guy, and I'll reiterate the stance that I'm going to stand on, which is that the efforts to protect our city, the efforts to not live in fear, is multi-pronged. It's everybody needs to rethink their approach, right? Oh, and that includes the media. They need to rethink their approach on how they report it, what they report, and ask themselves, is it really helping the situation or hindering the situation? Is it helping Cincinnati or is it hindering Cincinnati?
Before we move on to the next subject, which I sincerely think we should, if you don't mind, I just want to address one thing in the chat, because this is the second time this has been said. I don't know, somebody named Simba and somebody else, or that same person, said it during the last show, is something like, Phil, you're opposed to crime and all this and that, but why don't you criticize? Why do you support Israel for everything they've done? This is I've seen this twice. I just want to clarify something, okay? You can go to my podcast, Sanity Check, and look at my stuff, but what I've said, and I believe that I'm saying this just because this has appeared a couple times in the chat. My belief is that while Israel was a victim of genocide on that October 7th Hamas attack, in my opinion, I've said this, they committed genocide in Gaza. They killed over 60,000 people. And in my opinion, that is civilians mostly. That's genocide. So who's ever saying this in the chat, just want to correct you there if you don't mind.
Good segue. Let's move on. And this is the topic that the whole world has been talking about. And that is that the United States along with Israel, has fired missiles into Iran. People are calling it a war. You know, President Trump has put out press calling it just that. Others in the Republican Party are trying to walk it back, saying that it's a combat operation. But here we go. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, he says, quote unquote, we did not start this war. And my question is a couple things. Number one, what is your impression on this? Some are saying that this is something that had to happen because Iran was a threat to us. Others are saying that there's no information whatsoever to back up that statement. What do you think in general about the president's decision, along with Israel, to start a military situation with the country of Iran? Was it necessary in your opinion?
No, I don't think that it was necessary. And I think things that are, starting to come out in the days and the aftermath of the attack sort of show that, Iran wasn't much of a military threat to the United States, at all. I mean, they've sort of shown their ability to put up any resistance to the United States attacks, weren't as bad as many people had led Americans to believe it was. I think that there obviously it sounded like that they had the framework, or were working on some sort of a framework for an agreement that could have, move the United States towards some sort of monitoring of Iran's nuclear program. It was clear that the president and his people felt that Iran was not going to abandon their pursuit of nuclear weapons programs. And so they didn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And so from that standpoint, if you believe a nuclear Iran is a threat to the United States and everywhere else, then I guess you could say, yes, they were a threat. But were there other ways that you could have limited that threat? I think the problem that you have here in this situation is you have two untrustworthy governments that are giving you information that you can't trust. You can't trust what Iran says. And unfortunately, you can't trust what the Trump administration says. And so I think a lot of Americans are left trying to figure out, like, what is the truth? You know, Iran is saying, hey, they were working on something and they were willing to cooperate. Well, is that true? I don't know. Can't really trust them because they're sponsors of terrorism, and a whole lot of other things. Okay. And then you got the Trump administration, who we know lies incessantly. So you can't necessarily believe what they say. And so I think you got a lot of people who are trying to figure out, you know, where exactly the truth is. I think for me, where I'm going to leave it at in this situation is that the president's acts of war were illegal. He had an obligation to go through Congress and get approval for his actions and strikes and what he did. And that's where I'm going to leave things there. If he had gone to Congress, if he had made the case and Congress says, yeah, go ahead and go through with it and we do the strikes, okay, it is what it is. You went through the process, but he didn't do that. And so that's my biggest issue with what he's done here.
Do you think this is a war? Because some are saying it's not a war. This is just a military operation.
Yeah, okay.
If it was Obama did this, Obama made lots of strikes. Obama made lots of strikes. So let's move past that.
Wait, hold on. Wait, let's just go to facts. And I know everyone doesn't like that because I go too deep, but let's go to facts. First of all, Trump didn't start the war. They've been at it for a long time. This has been a problem. However, in 2015, Obama actually, if you guys remember, he did the nuclear deal and it was monitored. So don't get it twisted. It was done. It was monitored. There was all kinds of things that went in place. It was even some economic things they got for doing it. I don't know, when did Trump take over? In maybe 2018 or so, Trump decided to do away with the program. He withdrew it in 2018. He withdrew it 2018. No reason, no rhyme. They had not violated anything. I can sit here and wait for y'all to Google and catch up with me. But someone tell me when I'm lying, because I want to know when I'm lying. Because we should not spread untruths. That happens. So Biden tried his best, unsuccessfully. Some of the talk stalled to try to get that deal back signed to keep us safe from what Trump had done. Everyone with me? And It stalled and they weren't able to do it. So yes, are we at a point where something needed to be done if they're still doing this nuclear thing? Probably so. I don't know. I don't know what they were building, right? But we do need to keep ourselves safe. So at the end of the day, the person who started this was anyone who voted for Trump in 2018 and Trump in that administration, because there was no reason in the world to do it.
Okay, I want to get a couple minutes to follow up with that. I agree with what you said. Moving forward, they're just trying to, like the weapons of mass destruction of what the Bushes did. It's like they want to make money off of the war. China is taking over in Iran, and they're putting their foothold in Iran with drugs, pharmaceuticals, technology. And if they would get a hold of the oil in Iran, they would have a foothold in Iran that the United States can't, similar to Venezuela. So while China is doing it, so while China is moving in all these countries, America is using our stronghold in war, because this isn't a war. What I was saying about Is it just a military operation strike to show force? Because when it came to the Biden administration and Kamala Harris, they was going, don't. They got the clips. When it comes, what do you say about Iran? Both of them said, don't. Just don't. And then they asked Trump about what he's going to do. He said, I will bomb the S out of them. And Trump, being an opportunistic guy, seeing an opportunity, him along with his buddy Netanyahu, seeing another opportunity to flex their muscle, they go in here and do. And this is not. It has nothing to do with Iran. He of course he wants to help liberate their country if they feel like they're under a bad regime, because it just makes Trump look good to half of their people, because half the people there are happy that this happened. They're marching in the streets, similar to if something was to happen, a regime change in the United States of America, and Trump will be taken out. Half of our country will be in the streets cheering. So there is no difference. So when you get down to it, it's about oil and China. So whenever they got to block China they got to block China in some way and say, because if China controls the oil in all these places, because that's the only thing that we have on China right now, because they're killing us in natural resources, they're killing us in pharmaceuticals. Where does all these GLPs come from? China. And that's this is our way to chess maneuver and use our power over China, is to stop them from getting the oil.
Huh?
Yeah, I think what he's trying to say is that there are some who've posited that part of the United States agenda here or strategy is to sort of choke off, China, Russia's oil supplies by getting at some of their allies, Iran, Venezuela, places where they are benefiting from the oil industries there. So one of the subplots or sub strategies some have posited is that's what's behind what the Trump administration is doing in Iran and in Venezuela, is to try to choke off China and Russia's oil interests.
Yeah, we keep hearing that over and over again. Hey, Phil, what do you think? I mean, and it needs to be said that Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of War, said that we are at war. The president said this is a war.
So now y'all taking him serious? Usually y'all are like, oh, this dude's a clown. He shouldn't listen to anything he says. So now that he's making a statement that we all know, who are mature adults, that he is just making it a statement because he has not went through the proper channels to make this a war, going through Congress and Congress saying we are at war. That hasn't been done since World War II. Since Vietnam, it hasn't been done in a long, long time. So we're taking this dude's word salad and taking it and we all know he's
president. You talking about the president and the Secretary of War? They changed the name from defense to war, and you're saying we shouldn't take them for what they just said.
But they haven't changed the Constitution to the process they have to go through. I mean, that might work for the Democrats, how y'all try to get Kamala Harris into office, but that ain't the way it goes. You got to go through the proper channels.
You got to go through the proper channels. Oh, interesting. Hey, Phil, what do you think?
This whole thing makes me really sad, because I grew up kind of believing that our country were the good guys. We were the ones who defended. We were not the ones who started these wars. I grew up with reading about World War II and defeating the Nazis, and then Korea, where we really went to bat against a communist attack. And then there was the Cold War, where we fought for people's freedom. And it's so sad to me that to have to say that we're not the good guys. We're the ones who started this. Okay, we attacked them. And another thing that I think
they didn't hit Bahrain. They didn't attack Bahrain. Iran didn't hit Bahrain for us to go and give us a reason to go. It could be a made up attack, kind of like Pearl Harbor when we went in and they said that we attacked. It could have been inside, but Bahrain didn't get attacked first, and then we countered.
Well, Bahrain is not in the United States, and Pearl Harbor is part of the United States.
Could I finish just real quick, and then you can get back into, I don't know what Bahrain has to do with this, but anyway, we also should be a little more aware of the history of Iran, because in the 1950s, I don't know if everybody knows this, Iran had a democratically elected government in the 1950s, and our CIA overthrew them because they wouldn't play ball with the oil companies. We overthrew that democracy, and we installed a corrupt despot who tortured and brutalized his people, the Shah. That is what led to the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Nobody says that what they did about the hostages was right, but people better understand where that all came from. If we had not done what we did, the chances are there never would have been an Islamic republic. And as Alandes pointed out, that agreement that Obama cut was an excellent agreement. And you know how you know it was right? I mean, Trump claims it was the worst deal he's ever seen. I'll guarantee you, Donald Trump never read it, doesn't know what's in it. All he knew was it was done by Obama, and Fox News hated it. Okay? That agreement basically allowed us every year to send our weapons inspectors in to Iran and determine if they had, and it was like 10 years they couldn't do anything. Okay? And Iran fulfilled every iota of that agreement that Trump killed. And for those who say it's a bad deal, well, if it's a bad deal, then why did China, Russia, England, France, all the major powers sign on to it? Are they stupid? No, I don't think so. So that's the history that people need to be aware of. And I heard something today just to show you how convoluted the justifications that they're using for this war are. Now listen to this. This is a quote. Marco Rubio said, I believe today, he said, okay, the reason why we went in is because we knew that Israel was going to attack them, and that therefore they would attack Israel, and we have a right to defend Israel. That is exactly what he just said. Now, I mean, is that the stupidest thing and the most ridiculous thing that anybody's ever heard? That we went in because Israel was going to attack them, and then they were going to attack Israel. People are really really reaching for straws here.
But you know what? There's one thing that Alandes said, and I think Mr. Gregson said it in the comments that is undeniably true. Regardless of what you think about the Obama agreement, Trump ran on that in 2016. I'm gonna rip up the Iran agreement on day one, and they voted for him. So the majority of American people who elected him in 2016 and in 2024, you're getting what you voted for. I don't want to hear this buyer's remorse crap right now. Stand 10 toes down on your vote. In 2016, you voted in 2016 for him to rip up the agreement that Obama had because you bought what he was selling about it being a bad deal. You didn't like it. And so he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He ripped it up. And over the course of the next 8 years, we saw what Iran did with no eyes on them. They started building up their nuclear capabilities to the point where now this president who said he was going to be a peacetime president, not get involved in any foreign entanglements, now has the United States engaged in 7 different conflicts around the world. So much for Mr. Peace. So much for peacetime president, uniter, not divider. This is exactly what people voted for. So congratulations.
Don't get mad at me for saying this though, Kevin, please. Because it's not personal. But part of what made people lean that way is how the media continue. Like, people don't know what they don't know. And so many people believe in that 7-second clips and what people do. And I don't even think people understood what was going on. And in some regards, the media helps that. Like whether it's the right, the left, the corner, they use words like we were just talking about mass. Like I'm not saying, but some of it is intentional. And so people just don't know some of what they don't know. And there has to be some ownership in what's reported.
You're absolutely right. You know whose ownership it is, Alandes? It's on every individual. I always say this, that the media is the beginning of your knowledge and information and not the end. And so if you as an individual want to glean all of the information and knowledge that you have to move and operate from the news, then you're the fool, because that should never be your only source of information. And I get people are busy, but when you're talking about matters of life and death, your own freedom, your own sovereignty, if you limit yourself to a 7-second or 7-minute news clip, and that's what you're using to make your decision, that's on you.
So you're going to tell me,
Or worse, you're basing it on campaign ads. That's even worse.
Not only that, you're going to tell me that the media holds no responsibility in what they share.
No, I'm not saying that the media doesn't hold responsibility.
So first of all,
I think I'm not going to speak for everybody in the media, because that would be foolish to suggest that there aren't bad actors or people who don't operate on the same level of ethics as others. You can say that about any career, lawyers, politicians, doctors. There's no one a part of any industry that always operates above board or ethically. I'm talking about the majority as a whole. I say media is an imperfect platform. Whether you're talking about newspapers or TVs, if I've only got 500 words to tell a story, that is limiting. If I've only got 2 minutes in a news broadcast to tell a story, that is limiting by nature of the platform. And I don't care if you sat down and wrote a 450-page novella about the issues, people are not going to read that. Why? Because their attention span is short. They only want 7 minutes. You can't do anything comprehensively in 7 minutes. So that is not on the platform and the medium. That is on the individual. And this is where I get tired of people wanting to assign blame to everybody, but taking the responsibility for being a responsible citizen yourself and educating yourself on the issue, whether you get that from Channel 9, The Inquirer, Wikipedia, Google, wherever you're at, educate yourself. Don't blame it on anybody else.
But you thinking that I'm just saying is
it's involved. You got 3 people up here saying that the media helps shape our opinion, and you need to be a critical thinker. And personally, I didn't learn that until I got to college, that the media shapes your opinion on things. All we're saying is you guys have a responsibility. I understand your passion on your stance on you got to be mature adult, but the mass majority of people are not doing it that way. So there falls a responsibility on the media to know that. And you are different, my friend. You, my friend, anything I read of yours, I know it's coming from a good place. But like you said, there's a lot of bad actors who are public, who are journalists and put out content. There could be, like we talked about music, the hip hop music that was put out, where it's put out by record companies. But Iris Rowley said that in the chat, that there's record companies who use music to influence and talk about, because we were talking about the root causes of. If you're on your way to the club and you're listening to shoot 'em up, bang bang music on your way to the club, you're going to be more inclined to go do that instead of if you're listening to I'm going to go dance and try to find me a pretty girl. I mean, it's just psychological. So the media does play. We're not saying that just own it, the responsibility.
I'm not disavowing I take my responsibility as a journalist very seriously, and I can only speak about myself and those that I work with. But I always advocate for media savviness. Tarris, you made a good point. You're like, you read people who you can trust, right? And this is what I say about whether it's legitimate media or fake news that's on the internet. This is what people do. They see something and it hits them in their place of bias or their personal feeling, and they will share it without any regard to who the originator of the content is, whether they can be trusted. What is their agenda? They just share it, right? And they share a lot of bad stuff on social media. What I am saying is that people have an obligation to seek out sources for themselves that they trust, that provide good information, that operate in ethics, that follow some set of rules in gathering the information. You would never go to a doctor who didn't have credentials on the wall that said they were qualified to do surgery on you. Yet people take information all the time from unethical, unqualified sources, and they share it and they believe it. So I have argued that one of the things that media has gotten out of, which they used to do all the time, was begin media literacy and education in schools. You know, there was a thing called newspaper and education that is sorely needed, you know, in these days and times. Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff got chopped as, you know, as the newspaper industry changed and the internet and, you know, the economics of media changed. A lot of those programs went by the wayside. But,
so
You know, I think
Kevin, don't. So I do want us to say this. So when we're saying media plays a role, they know they do. Why do you think people are trying to stop media from what they can say?
Sure.
They understand their power of their voice. And not everyone is supposed to understand that, because some people decided to be something else in life. That's one thing. I'm just saying there's an ownership in the media. I'm not saying we all don't have collective ownership, even as a person voting and everything, but it is a big, huge part that media plays in helping shape some of this. So I think you should own it. I think it's a great thing. I think you do it well. It's not attacking you, but there is ownership. It does not take, my comment does not take away what I own or what everyone else owns, but not everyone is going to do that. And voters in particularly they vote emotional sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's confusing. Even for us, it can be confusing to find the truth. The truth is getting harder and harder to find. The reason why they are changing media and all the things Trump is doing is because they understand that's where the power lies. So you're acting like it doesn't, and it does.
I'm not acting like it does. I'm saying where the power really lies. I'm a big personal responsibility person, and you're never going to win an argument with me trying to put responsibility on somebody else for what we all individually owe. So to say that the media shapes my opinion, but I do nothing to educate myself or inform myself that I don't even know whoever I'm watching on the TV, what their agenda is or what they're doing. I can't say that I know the power of media and the influence of media, but then not to do things to insulate myself and protect myself from that, to make sure that those in that area are not deceiving me or moving me. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, the media is powerful and I know their influence, and then allow yourself to be influenced, right? Without educating or acknowledging yourself. Then that's willful ignorance. That's willful blindness to say, I recognize the power of this, but I'm just going to follow along with everything that they say anyway and not try to educate myself.
Yeah, but we know what we're dealing with.
These are things I spend a lot of time sitting around thinking about. And
not just because I'm trying to defend
myself, but just these topics in general.
Okay. When you think about what I say, just if you don't mind, I am not putting blank ownership on just one thing. I'm just saying the influence. And then you understand that there's a diverse group of people out there that catch it. Some people have the wherewithal to kind of understand. Some people don't. You're speaking to the masses from the media. So there are all kinds of people that catch it. At the end of the day, we own what we do and what we absorb and go get. I'm never taking that away from you. I love that as an individual. So I'm just saying we understand our power. That's it.
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately, I think that a lot of people's viewpoint about Iran has been shaped through primarily mainstream media sources. And I think that a lot of Americans don't know the history. They don't know about what Phil talked about. They have no idea about the Shah. They don't know about Mossadegh. They don't know how we arrived here. And I think that there's a lot of, misinformation and disinformation about Iran in terms of what they are now, what their motivations are. I hear people saying we can't allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And on the surface, I get it. But then I think to myself, well, the United States is the only country to ever drop a nuclear weapon on a population. And I'm just not so sure if we know everything. Here's what I've seen. What I've seen is the countries that have nuclear weapons don't get pushed around. That's what I've seen. If you don't have a nuclear weapon, then big countries do whatever they want to do to you. So I'm like, well, is the real issue that we want these countries to not be as nuclear armed so we can do what we want to do to them? And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that. Here's the other thing: people are saying,
Can I throw something in on
Sure,
top of what
sure,
you're
go
saying?
ahead, Phil.
I apologize. I have to jump off in
Yeah.
about 5 minutes, but one of the really phony reasons that they are using for this, and they used it in Vietnam and in Iraq, is we want to free them. We want to free them. Well, if that is the goal, then why aren't you attacking Saudi Arabia? Iran actually has elections, and they're relatively valid. Saudi Arabia, there's no free speech there. There's no voting. There's no right of assembly. There's nothing there. I could say the same thing for Qatar and a bunch of other countries that we are real close to. So I don't ever want to hear this excuse, which they are saying now, that we need to free those people, because it's totally phony. We only want to free the people that we don't like the government.
I mean, what I'll add to that is a lot of people are saying that they want regime change. And again, I'm no military strategist, but to my knowledge, you can't do that with just an air assault. If you're going to do regime change,
it hasn't worked with any kind of assault.
Never happened in America.
Works
in any military conventional that I have ever read about. So that means regime change means boots on the ground. That means American soldiers going into a country that's populated by about 90 million people. And again, I'm no military strategist, but I just feel like that is something that is going to be reminiscent of some really just not so good news that people are going to have to stomach. And, I think Americans, elections have consequences. And I have to make this point. Kamala Harris tried to warn us. She told us all of this. She said it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. But people were too caught up with who was dancing at her concerts and her events. They was too caught up with the way she laughs. Right. They were too caught up with the fact of what her ethnicity is. And now we are where we are. And I think that people need to be I don't think that people really understand how potentially life-altering for this country this could be. Because you're talking about what could happen, I hope it doesn't happen, is the destabilization of the petrodollars. I mean, you've got those GCC countries, those 6 monarchies, including Saudi Arabia. You mentioned Bahrain and others over there. Their connection to U.S. investments. Like right now, the U.S. economy is being propped up by AI. A lot of those investments are coming from those GCC companies or countries. And
and they're also investing in the Trump business. All of those countries,
they've got a lot of investments in America,
pouring billions into Trump's businesses.
The GCC countries also have a lot of investment in the American economy. And right now it appears that rather than attacking the United States, because Iran doesn't have the capabilities to do that right now, they're attacking those GCC countries. That could have a catastrophic impact on the American economy. So, I mean, I hate to put it this way, but it appears that we may have opened Pandora's box.
Sure. Well, it's no different. It's no different than what we saw in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Look, there's one thing to say.
And we had boots on the ground. We still couldn't overthrow the regime.
Well, it's different right now, but it's trending towards that. Because if you're talking about regime change, and at that extent, you don't get the type of regime change that Trump is talking about without putting boots on the ground. You're not going to get, regime change in Iran through airstrikes. And so now you've killed the leadership there, and you don't know what's going to fill. You basically have no control right now at present over what's going to fill that vacuum. So that's why I say it's one thing to say, hey, we're going after their nuclear capabilities, and another thing to say we want to kill all of their leadership in government and institute people in their place who we like or who like us. I think every country has a right to their own sovereignty, whether we agree with how they're running their things in their country, how they may or may not be controlling their people, just as the United States would not want anybody coming in here, killing our leaders, trying to change the nature and the direction of our country, or meddling in our elections. The United States needs to keep their hands out of those same situations, in other countries, short of an imminent threat or provocation to our national security. And that's where I started out in the beginning by saying, what we've seen is Iran was really no threat at all. Now, if you want to say that their nuclear program, if you want to go so far as to say that their nuclear program was a threat, okay, they tried to hit their installations and their facilities before. They were supposedly totally obliterated. We found out that turned out to be a lie. And now this initial strike was supposed to be about that. And now it's about 5 or 6 other things, which the United States should not be involved in. So I think, I would almost be with you to the point of national security of, hey, you probably don't want a country that is involved in terrorist networks that have threatened to death to America and our allies. You probably don't want them to have nuclear capabilities. I can understand that. Just like you wouldn't want anybody that was gunning for you and your family to have an automatic weapon. You probably would want to keep that out of their hands as well. So that's understandable. But all of this other stuff that the United States is doing, they don't need to be engaged in, and we haven't been very good at it in the past. And to your point, it's always cost American lives and it's wrecked our economy.
And normally it has to do with money. Like somehow, I don't know. It's like normally at the root cause of most of what people do, money and power are involved.
Jared Kushner.
Yeah. So it is like really and truly.
Well, I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's just it's just normally involved. Go ahead.
Kevin, the only thing I would caution you about is comparing. I mean, there's some comparisons in terms of generally the U.S. expending our resources, because the United States is broke right now. We broke. So, Iran is firing $100,000 rockets and $50,000 drones, and the United States is spending $11 million per interceptor missile. That's not sustainable. We don't have the money for that. And so there are some distinctions, profound distinctions between what is happening now with Iran and Afghanistan and Iraq. They're similar in terms of, we're talking about U.S. military, but the circumstances of the United States right now and who Iran is and what they can do, primarily in terms of cyber terrorism. It is significant, and people should understand that. This is opening Pandora's box. This country is broke. We're broke. People can barely afford to get energy every month and pay electricity bills. And again, $11 million per interceptor missiles, which don't even work all the time anyway, trying to knock down $50,000 drones and $100,000 missiles being fired by Iran. Just do the numbers. I mean, we're into the billions already. Who's paying for this? We're not even talking about the cyber capabilities of Iran, which are significant. Country fired our cyber terrorisms are. We don't even have anybody in place in that position right now in Homeland Security. So, I mean, this is not a game, and some things just should not be done. And I fear for the future of what this means for our country, primarily, because I'm an American first. I just don't know if I don't feel like this is America first. And I don't think there's any way to win this. And again, I've never been in the military, but just my limited information. I don't think you win this in terms of regime change unless you put American soldiers on the ground. That's going to skyrocket the cost and potentially the death toll. And it's like, here we go again. And it's just very, very, very not good what I'm seeing right now. And, for folks who don't understand, okay, you may not understand it, but for folks who've got a limited understanding of what this means, this is like worst case scenario. So what I'm hoping is that it can contain this. They've already, it appears to have unalived the supreme ruler. If somebody did that to us, that's not something we would just get over with the next election. There's going to be lingering consequences to this that are going to affect Americans for the next couple of decades, at the very least. At the very least. This is not a game. And again, I'll say it again, this country is baroque. We 40 something $1 trillion in debt. We don't have the money for this. And so that means it'll probably be prosecuted on the backs of the middle class, as always, the working class. And I don't even know what that actually means. I don't even know what that, I can't even see far enough to see exactly what the deleterious implications of this move could actually be. And it's like, for what? You can't force another country to do what we want them to do, and they're 5,500 miles away from us. I just feel like, I'm with you, Kevin. People need to do their homework about the history, because the history matters. They need to understand who Iran is and what their capabilities are. And then all those, I keep saying GCC countries and their relationship to the U.S. economy. It is profound. And most people are just like, that's the Middle East. No, we are all connected in this world. And what happens over there affects us over here, primarily in terms of our economy, which I'll say again is being propped up by primarily AI investments. We don't know what that means for the future of the U.S. economy or not, but there are very, very serious consequences to what just happened. And I want America to come out on top, as always. And I'm trying to see what that actually means. Yeah. Because at this point right now, it's just not looking good on any levels.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a point where America's got to come out of its tribal politics here and start asking and demanding clear answers to the question of, what are we actually doing there? Why are we there? What is the plan long term? All the answers to all of these questions are critical, and it can't just simply be Trump is my guy, so I'm going to defend this, come hell high water. It can't be, if you are a supporter of Israel that and you happen to live here in the United States, that, hey, they got the bad guy who's trying to attack Israel, so it doesn't matter, whether we're following the proper protocols or not. This is what Trump preys on. Trump's preys on the ends justify the means. Right. And that plays right into our tribal politics, that if I can produce a result that you like, then how I got there and the ramifications of it don't matter. And I think that this is part of the problem of the conversation that's going on in Congress right now. This man just rode roughshod over your authority and your ability to declare things like this. This vote on the War Powers Act, it should be a no-brainer. This should be 100% consensus in both houses of Congress. There should be no debate on this. There should be no split on this. But you know why there is a split? Because you've even got people like our local rep, Greg Landsman, who has supported President Trump in this action because it benefits Israel, and that's something that's important to him. And trust me, Landsman has no love for Donald Trump. I know he doesn't. But this is the situation that Donald Trump is good, very good at putting people in. It's the same thing that he did with Venezuela. So if you've got Iranian Americans here or Venezuelan Americans here, they're happy. They're praying, whether they voted for Donald Trump or not, they're happy because he's gotten rid of terrible leadership in those countries that has been oppressive to many of them who live in the country. And this is where we are. But while the result ultimately might have been good from a humanitarian standpoint, the means the means do matter. And those are the tough questions that Americans have got to be asking right now in this moment.
So I will say this, whatever questions we're asking, they're probably wrong, because this has been the most strategic group of people in his administration. In all honesty, whatever we're paying attention to probably isn't the ulterior goal. So you really have to understand that some of the things at play is bigger than just this moment, because sometimes they use these moments as they're doing something else. So think about even the fact that if we're at war, it might impact even the most upcoming election.
Oh, it does, Alandes.
You get what I'm saying? It is
get ready. Let me say it right now. Get ready for the
Yeah.
third Donald Trump term. It is going to happen. I'm gonna make a bold statement. Donald Trump will be in office for a third term because it could work like this, and I could be wrong. For us to get boots on the ground, Trump is going to have to go to Congress to get war powers. I believe he will get them because even though you'll have Democrats who will say, well, I don't like how he did it. Hey, we're here now. We got to support it. Go America. Once he gets war powers, once he gets war powers, he gets powers over the midterm elections. And there it is.
And this midterm election, if done right, he's gone. Do you know what I'm saying? Because they will no, because if the midterm goes right and the right people they will have no choice but to actually look at getting rid of Trump and having a vote to actually impeach him. And he's even said it. No,
Trump is like Mayweather to me. Until I see somebody beat him, I don't vote of you. I
understand, but you do understand that he knows that there's the possibility. Like the Epstein and all of that stuff, he wants to do away with the possibility. So I'm just saying, this is such important stuff. But what's about to happen to us? I don't even know who's going to be middle class. So if you consider yourself middle class, you might be actually broke. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
I get what you're saying.
Our class system, because this is going to be such an economic hit, in addition to where are we really going? So impeachment, conviction, all of that stays in play with the right people in Congress.
Yeah, Elizabeth Rice, shut up, Nathan. No one wants to hear that bad news.
Oh, yeah.
This country needs to collapse. Hey, listen, I'm just being provocative for the sake of the conversation. I mean, I don't know. But I wouldn't bet against them. I would not bet against them. Because, I mean, look at what we've seen so far. I mean, Trump has the ability. It don't matter what it is. He has an ability to get out of it by any means necessary, and I don't see any reason to think that that's going to stop.
I'm going to bet on
I necessarily want it. I'm just saying, if it happens, I'm not going to be surprised.
I'm a bet on us. That's what I'm betting on. I'm betting on us. So let's hope. But anyway, I don't know what all they're trying to do. I just know it's like the culture of make-believe these days. What's really going on?
Grasson writes, impeachment and conviction are two different things. Absolutely two different things. He writes, you need 67 senators to convict. Absolutely. To impeach, you mean? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle depending on who has control of, the so-called upper chamber. We'll see. I mean, I'm not even sure if I think that's the right way to go with impeachment, in my opinion, at this point. They tried it twice. I mean, why try it for a third time and then lose again? We are.
Didn't I say that a couple podcasts ago? I think I got shouted down in that podcast for saying that, Nathan. I'm glad to see that you come around to my way of thinking.
Well, and I'm glad to see you. Absolutely, and I'm glad to see you come around to my way of thinking, because when we talked about the bombing in Iran about 5 months ago, you were on the other side of that. I remember you putting up quite a defense of Donald Trump, saying that liberals and Democrats are always going against him, and that we have no evidence that the bombing didn't actually work. And I was trying to tell you what was out there. So, we can learn from one another.
As a Republican, I don't believe
I must have been playing devil's advocate that day. That don't sound like
I have a question for you guys. As a Republican, I don't believe that Donald Trump's going to go for a third term. I don't believe he's going to do it. So if he does go for a third term, who are y'all going to put up against him to beat him? Please tell me it's not Kamala Harris, because if you put up Kamala Harris, he's going to beat him. He's going to beat her worse than he did the last time.
Yeah, but think about this though. If the Donald Trump tried to go against the expressly written will of the Constitution, would that be the most relevant question? Who the Democrats put up? The real question would be what are we going to do to resist that? That would be against the Constitution.
I don't think that's gonna happen. What's more likely than Donald Trump running for a third term is Donald Trump stealing a third term. Like that's more likely than changing the Constitution to allow for a third term, because I don't think the Republicans want that either, because eventually there will come a time where look, Trump is not going to live forever. I mean, a lot of people may think he's the devil, but he's not actually immortal. He's not actually that. So the good good father time is going to come for all of us. So I know it doesn't seem like that right now, but Donald Trump is not going to be always. And I think the Republicans have at least enough sense to recognize that they don't want to be on the other end of a bad law that might allow a liberal that they hate to be in power for 3 terms. I just don't believe that's going to be the case. What's more likely is that Trump will do everything that he can to stay in power without having to have another election. I think that's what we need to be concerned about.
Well, I just said that.
He is talking about that more openly now. Like he's not even making pretenses anymore about trying to go out of his way to interfere.
I think he's trolling you guys. When he's doing that, he's trolling you guys because
he's dead serious.
I think he's trolling you guys. Because whenever people like 4 more people, he was at a Black History and they were chanting 4 more years, and Chan was like, yeah, you want me to know? Trump was like, yeah, you want another one? I think he's trolling because he doesn't even want he said that. So the more that you guys concentrate on that fallacy, you guys aren't going to be prepared to combat J.D. Vance or whoever the Republicans, because then that's the last thing I'd want to see the Democratic Party do again is fumble like you did this last past time. I mean, this last past time you guys could have beat Donald Trump if you guys could have been a little bit more prepared. But instead, you went with the same playbook, with the same Joe Biden, he's ready until the debate, and then you had to scramble. I'd hate to see you guys do that.
So here's one thing that's happened is the president, Trump, has already said, he said this when he put a statement out. He said part of the reason or part of his thinking and rationale, he put it on True Social, was that Iran was meddling in our election back in 2020. That's what he said. He put it out in his own statement. And there's something going around the internet right now where people are saying that they're getting information that President Trump is going to try to claim that China has somehow meddled in our election. And then therefore, Trump needs special powers, war powers, to be able to make the election safe in the midterms, which people are saying could just be a rationale to try to like steal it.
Can I ask you a question? Who started this dossier fake election stuff? Who started it? And it's been proven the CIA, Obama started this way back in the day. He started it, and then they said, "Oh, it's not true." And Obama said, "Keep it up anyway. We want you to."
I never heard Obama question the elections. I never heard Obama question the elections.
They did say that.
I'm clipping this. I'm gonna clip all that.
So I don't know if that's true, but and I do have to jump off. But I will say this: this is my whole thing: is when we start taking away the hope of what we can do, we don't vote. And right now, what we have to know is we still need to exercise our right, no matter what happens. And what happens in our community, especially the Black community, is we keep talking about no hope and people won't show up to vote. I'm keeping hope alive in this situation, and I'm hoping for the best thing. But what we can't do is give up. And then to your point, Tarris, some of the things you say about the the Democratic Party is spot on. Some things you say is a little strange, but some things are spot on. I think that we have to be ready. But ready or not, if we don't vote, it means nothing. Nothing.
And here's where I'm with Alandes on this too, and I've said this many times. There's a part of me that says, regardless of what you think about Donald Trump and his sycophantic faithful, I still think there are way more Americans who would not stand for, even those who might have voted for Donald Trump, who would not stand for the eradication of our electoral system and the denial of elections. I just don't believe that. I think if Trump went too far, I think the people, not just Democrats, but I think there are a lot of people, Democrats, independents, and even some Republicans that would show up en masse and just say, this is a bridge too far. And I've kind of held that ground, and I could turn out to be wrong. In spite of everything that Donald Trump has done, I think if he tries to cross that bridge, I think the outrage, the revolt from the American people would be so strong that would absolutely be the end of him and any sort
And
of
what would these people
fever
do, Kevin?
dreams he had.
What would these people do? Would they show up in protest? Or you saying they would show up
Absolutely.
and
I mean, if you think, I tell you what, if you think January 6th was bad for a bad reason, get Americans fired up where you're really trying to take away their rights. And I'm talking about a righteous indignation. What Donald Trump fomented on January 6th was not righteous. It was BS. But I think if you foment really, really righteous indignation, I don't think we've seen anything like that. I mean,
have you seen the reporting about
King's marches? I mean, which you were a big proponent of some months ago. What was it? 7 or 8 million people showed up for those No Kings protests. Huh?
They showed up peacefully.
Yeah, and I think people will show up peacefully as well, but they will show up in much larger numbers than 7 or 8 million if you try to mess with the election.
And that would do what exactly? So if people showed up peacefully and marched, and let's say, the current administration tried to quote unquote steal the election, what impact is that going to do after everything is done?
I think it's going to snap Congress. I think it would snap the Supreme Court. Like what right now, what you have, why Congress doesn't move and why you get what you get out of the Supreme Court is sort of this belief that while Donald Trump is pushing the envelope, he doesn't really have, there's plausible deniability at this point about what Donald Trump's intentions are. And there's not mass public pressure. Like right now, there's the sense that America's divided. 50% is for Trump and 50% is against Trump. I don't know if that's actually realistic or not, if those are actually accurate numbers or not. But that's sort of the sense that the country is divided enough to where there's sort of safe harbor and sitting on the fence or kind of even allowing him to get away with some things. But I think if there was overwhelming rejection of Donald Trump, that both Congress and the court would be responsive to that. They would be more responsive to that than they would be to him.
So you think that and the only way you're going to get overwhelming, I mean, how could it get much worse? The only way it can get much worse in terms of poll numbers is if the core base of MAGA and Republicans revolt against Donald Trump. And you're saying you believe that if he went so far as to challenge the legitimacy of our elections again, because he's already done it once, then and installed himself in some way, legally or illegally, to stay in office, you're saying that would wake up the MAGA base? Because I'm not so sure about that.
No, I'm not saying it will wake up the MAGA base. I think it will wake up a lot of disaffected Americans. I mean, look, Nathan. Let's just be real. There are more people who don't participate in the process in this country that do. We're talking about the voters who cast votes in this last election, but they don't represent all Americans. Like, there are a lot of people in this country who don't engage themselves in voting or in the process, but who have a stake in the outcome in the future of this country. And just like Donald Trump woke up, ambivalent parts of the country through the MAGA movement with what he said, I think those types of actions might wake up some folks who normally are not a part of the process, to get involved, whether that's to show up at a protest or whatever, to voice their opposition to that. Sometimes you can wake a sleeping giant. Like, there are a lot of people who are asleep right now, who are not necessarily in MAGA. They're just
plugged into the matrix. Yeah, you're right. They're asleep. They're plugged into the matrix. I'm not so sure. I don't know if I agree with. I want to agree with you. I do. I want to agree with you. But there's a part of me just feels like there's some people who are so heavily plugged into the matrix, their little world, their little disaffected world, or their blissfully ignorant world, whatever it is, that nothing's going to unplug them unless it affects them directly in some type of way. And a lot of disaffected people don't feel affected by whoever's in office, so they're like, makes no difference unless it affects their home, their energy, their what they like to do on a regular basis, how they like to spend their money. They don't really care. And I'm not really sure. Like, if they're not awoke now, I'm not sure if that'll wake them up. But maybe it will be. I'll be positive about it.
A lot of people are in denial, Nathan. It's like, I think what allows people to stay asleep is the denial of an apocalypse that they don't believe will ever come. And that's what I'm saying. Like, when that When that becomes evident and it's on your doorstep, then you sort of wake up. Like, I think a lot of people are in that slumber, like, oh, this is Trump. Like Tarris said, he's just trolling. This ain't real. It's much ado about nothing. And it's all cool until the gooch show up, you know, on your doorstep asking for your lunch money.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that is what that point would be.
No, I agree with you, Dan. I agree with you.
Can I agree with you? Touch on something that somebody said in the chat about Jasmine Crockett tonight. I think that her.
Can I just make a real quick point, Tarris, to what he was already talking about, and then I'll give the floor to you. I agree with you. I just disagree that they'll wake up in enough time. So yeah, I think that people wake up, but I think that by that sleeping majority, by the time they wake up, it'll already be checkmate, and you're only a move or two away from that. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, people will wake up.
That's where I hope I'm right and you're wrong, and you very well could be right. You could.
It's just like Noah's Ark.
You could very well be right.
It's just like Noah's Ark, right? People could, man, Noah, stop, you tripping. But when they saw that tidal wave coming, they woke up. But by that time, it was too late.
Too late to get on board at that point.
Right, it's too late now. You can't get on board. You don't have enough time to build your own ark. You done. And that's what I see happening in America. Like that movie, The Matrix, wasn't about the future. It was about right now. People are asleep and plugged in a dreamland right now. But go right ahead, Tarris. You were saying something about Jasmine Crockett. I know it was a big primary today, right?
Yeah, I didn't know if you were in the closing, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't make sure. I just wanted to.
Yeah, we're about to close up. I don't want to take any more time. I know you guys are really, really busy.
Oh, I'm cool. The Jasmine Crockett election tonight. The Jason Tarullo, is that his name? Who she's primarying against in Texas?
Tallarico.
James Tallarico.
James Tallarico. Yeah.
I think we should watch this race, and I've seen some people in the comment section cheering for her. My friends who I was just traveling with, they're from Texas. They all went down and voted for her. But kind of think of the Democratic Party. If you guys really want to put a seat in there, I don't think that she's going to, in that state, she could win that seat and that Senate seat. So that's something like after maybe one day we could one day down the road, we can go back and address the Jasmine Crockett if she is to win this.
I get my quick thoughts on it. Like my quick thoughts, I'm not in Texas. I'm no Texas political environment expert in any means, but just from where I'm my vantage point, if James Cornyn wins the Republican primary, then he'll beat either Tallarico or Jasmine Crockett. If Paxton wins because of his baggage, because of just who he is, his history, it opens the door for a Democrat to win.
Well, they're saying he's in danger, right? That's why I think isn't he at risk? Aren't they saying there's a good chance that he could lose to the extreme 8?
Yeah, that's what they're saying right now. That Paxton is going to come out of the primary primarily because he's very, very close to Trump. But then the Republicans, from what I'm reading, could be real or not, they're fearful because he's in danger against the Democrat at the at-large level. So.
Yeah,
we'll have to wait and see.
They won't vote for Jasmine Crockett being a woman and then being a woman of color. That will hurt her in a majority white voting male state. So say that will hurt. Like it's political strategy point of view. That Jasmine Crockett winning, it'll be a kumbaya for Black Americans. Look what we putting up to for the sacrificial lamb, so to speak. You know, because they're saying there's no end for her to win. But if it was James Tallarico, he would have an opportunity to be a better opponent to face up. So this is a clear case of will Black voters be more emotional or more politically mature when it comes to the outcome of this election after tomorrow or today?
No, I disagree with you. I think it's not whether Black people are going to be emotional. It's about whether Hispanic male voters are going to be emotional. There's a lot of gender bias among Hispanic males. We saw that in the election in 2024. Many of them swung to Trump because they wouldn't vote for a woman. And that's why I said gender played a big role. That's a big reason why Donald Trump's in office. His numbers among Hispanic voters were huge. And I think primarily a lot of that was driven by Hispanic males because they got a gender bias against women in leadership. But also white voters. But also white voters. I mean, we never talk. Are white voters going to be emotionally mature?
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Nathan, for saying that.
How many times have they ever been emotionally mature when it comes to that kind of stuff. Overwhelmingly, if you look at when Trump's in office against a woman, overwhelmingly white men vote for Donald Trump. In Texas, that's what I'm talking about. Realistically,
but that doesn't matter though, Tarris. Overwhelmingly, white men vote Republican. Period. It does, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Jeb Bush, whether it's whoever. White men vote Republican overwhelmingly. That's pretty much the reality of things. But to Nathan's point, I always hate that it's always put on black people to be the ones who have to vote with emotional maturity. Like we carry the burden for racism, and I would say women carry the burden for sexism, all the time, that we have to adjust and say that, hey, because white males in Texas or wherever won't vote for a black candidate or a female candidate, so we have to adjust and vote for a white male candidate or somebody else that we don't really agree with, but because we want to have a chance to win. No, that's crap. That's ridiculous. That's enabling and propping up a system of racism and misogyny, and then you can't turn around and complain about it because we enable it. If Jasmine Crockett is your vote of choice, then vote for her, whether she wins or loses. This is the thing about elections. Polls can try to be predictive, but you never really know what could happen. I would feel bad that if Jasmine Crockett had a chance to win and I didn't vote for her, and then she lost to somebody else, and then say Paxton or whoever, he comes out with some kind of sex scandal that submarines his campaign, and now some dude that I didn't really want in the first place that could have been Jasmine Crockett is benefiting from that now. We have to vote on our principles and who we like. And I would say you don't just vote for somebody because they're black. That shouldn't be the primary reason for why you vote for somebody either.
Right.
I'm saying vote for them because they're a good candidate or they're not.
That's why I'm asking for us to follow this race so we can study it as black people, so we can learn from this. If I'm making the argument is if Jasmine Crockett wins, is the Jasmine Crockett win worth a Jasmine Crockett loss in the general? Is it putting her up out there? Is it worth it for the Democratic Party? If the Democratic Party could potentially win with a James Talarico because of his gender, specifically because of his gender, because Republicans are going to come out and vote against a black. Is it more okay to put her up there to say at least we're represented? I'm saying as black voters, we should be more mature to say, okay, we love her, but we don't need to put her up there because if she loses, her political career is over. She can't come back.
It's not over. But you know what? I misunderstood your point, and I understand what you're saying now. I was making another point about the point that Kevin was making. We're always putting the onus on black voters. What about white voters? Which I stand on. But I understand what you're saying. So if I'm in Texas, I'm looking at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is,
if you want Democratic representation in the Senate,
Democratic representation, I'm looking at the bigger picture. So it would be a consideration for me as to whether Jasmine Crockett could actually win in the general. That would be a consideration, because I don't know. And again, I haven't done my homework on both the two candidates, but I don't know if it's worth it for her to win. To the point you just made, I don't know if it's worth it for her to win in the primary just to lose in the general. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
I have nothing against Jasmine Crockett. That's all I'm saying is if we could study this as case study for our programming, that we could be more aware to it, because people were mad because Kamala Harris lost. They were mad just because they said they took all the emotion. It was all emotion, just like with this Jasmine Crockett. My buddy said he voted for her because she's black and he wanted to have representation. I'm saying even if she's going to lose in the general. Even if Kevin has
this is what I find insulting, and I think a lot of Republicans say this all the time, like they have the monopoly on critical thinking and logic and lack of emotion. If Jasmine Crockett is my candidate, if I like Jasmine Crockett and that's not an emotional decision. Now, right. What you're talking about is pragmatism. Okay, which is very different than saying that I'm an emotional individual. If I say, hey, this is my person and I'm going to vote for them, win or lose. They may win in the primary and they may lose in the general, so be it. This is my person. I would rather lose with my person than support some Democrat who even if he wins, might not be a real Democrat, or, may not be for the same issues that Jasmine Crockett was for, even within the Democratic Party that I care about. Like, those are critical thinking. Like, I think a lot of times, and I think this is because I think this is how I'm not going to say how some white people view how blacks vote. Like, I think a lot of white people think, or I shouldn't say a lot, I'm not going to some white people think that black people base their vote solely on skin color. And that's not it. It just so happens, however, though, that most of the people who share my skin color share a commonality on the issues that matter to me. So it's not so much just that they have black skin. It's a fact that we have a shared experience that when they run for office, I trust they're going to bring that to the table. White people do the same thing. They do the same thing. It's just not associated with their skin color. It's all about one's interests. I'm not going to vote for a completely unqualified individual just because they're black, even if I think they might be on the side of my issues. If I don't think they're competent, I'm not voting for you, because that does nothing good for the furtherance of the race anyway. You want the most competent people at work, and those are the ones who you want to give your ballot to. So I'm not one who buys into this, always painting people with emotion or the fact that they're not thinking critically when they look at it. People vote their interests, and
I'm with you 1,000%. I'm glad you said that. I agree with you 1,000%. But in this case, it actually is interesting because, again, I haven't done a whole lot of research. I can't tell you I'm like well-versed on where they all stand. But from where I sit, they appear to be politically to be very similar. And that would be the first time they had a Democrat senator in Texas. I don't know the history, but in a long time. So what do you do, Kevin? I mean, it's like, if you are primarily a Jasmine, you're a Democrat. Let's say you're a Democrat, hypothetically. You're a Democrat, right? So you want a Democrat to win in Texas, but you're a Jasmine Crockett person. But then you're looking at the general thinking, well, I don't know if she can actually win the general. Do you vote Tallarico because you think, and maybe it's because of demographics, white male, he's got the Christian background, the way he approaches things, the way he speaks. Do you vote with him because you're like, well, at least he's a Democrat and he's got a better chance of winning if you believe that? I mean, it's actually a good choice to have.
Thank you for framing that differently, Nathan, because that's the only question I was asking. I was like, maybe after we see what happens tomorrow, we can study this, going forward. That's the only question I had.
I think
what do you do in that case, Kevin? What do you
know what, Nathan? I think that's again, as I said to Tarris, I think that's a pragmatic approach. But here's the problem with that, because then it becomes the same type of party politics where you're not putting the person perhaps that the people want out there. You're putting some establishment individual that is a cookie cutter idea of who the party wants to run. So just imagine if here in the Cincinnati,
it doesn't have to be that though. Maybe it's not just that. Maybe it's because I seen it was a white female. She appeared to be a Democrat. She was crying. They asked her who she voted for. She said, I'm a Crockett person, but I voted for Tallarico because I don't think she can win in a general. She wasn't happy about it, but she was being pragmatic. And it's less about Tallarico being cookie cutter, but more she's thinking intelligently, like, I know this state, and this state may not vote for a black female. And I wanted to get a Democrat in there. So I had to hold my nose and vote for somebody that was perhaps a second choice, but at least they're a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, what's wrong with it? Isn't that just intelligent voting? Like,
but it presupposes, I guess it presupposes the fact of what I just said. Elections are strange. Anything can happen. A lot of people didn't think Barack Obama had a chance to win until he won Iowa. And then suddenly it's kind of like there were a whole lot of people who before he won Iowa were like, yeah, I kind of like Barack Obama, but, I don't know if I can vote for him because I'm not sure he can win, right? It's this notion of, as minorities, again, it's part of the burden that we carry, that we always have to say the doubt of our inability to overcome racism makes us say that we're not going to vote for certain people, or that certain people should step back so others can run because the country or a certain part of the country is not ready to elect somebody. And I guess what my point is if we stick to that and we continue to do that, we never force the country to face that, or we never really have real conversations about what are you voting for? So why does Tallarico have more of a chance to win in Texas than Jasmine Crockett? If it's race or gender, if that's the reason, then that's a problem that Democrats need to be talking about more broadly instead of telling voters not to vote for Jasmine Crockett or that blacks can't win. In that case, then the Democratic Party might as well start making decisions about who can run everywhere not based on what the people want, not based on what Democratic voters in a primary want, but who they think stands the best chance to win from a pragmatic standpoint.
If you want to win, because it's going to happen again when it comes to the 2028 election or with the next presidential election. You could have white male Gavin Newsom or white male Andy Beshear going against black female Kamala Harris, who has already lost before. Where will the Democratic loyalty lie with intelligent, emotionally intelligent, mature thinking Democratic voters were like, nope, I'm going with Kamala because she's a black woman. I'm going with Kamala because she's a black woman. When she's already been beat by the Republican one other time, there are cracks in her campaign, and if the Democratic Party, the clear choice would be to go with a male candidate. That's what I'm saying. Can we watch this Jasmine Crockett situation unfold? So in a couple years, when this thing happens again and Kamala Harris is in our face as a Democratic nominee, will we think, can she beat J.D. Vance? Can she beat him?
She'll have a primary though, Tarris.
Worry about J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio. Trump eats his young, to steal a phrase from Anthony Scaramucci. I mean, just ask his last VP. I just don't think that Trump does not appear to be the type of person who's just going to hand off the scepter to his VP. He doesn't come across like that. And I don't know if JD, with everything that's going on, the way he looks, it just doesn't seem, I could be totally wrong presidential, but I think that Kamala Harris did have cracks. She had three primarily. Number one, she only had 100 and something days to vote. That was the biggest crack. The other two cracks were cracks that she was born with. She's a black woman. She's black and she's a woman. And there was nothing she could do about that. And it's the same thing with Jasmine Crockett. I'm not knocking her. And that's why, I know Brent, I think Brent's in Texas. What do you think, Brent? I want to hear from somebody in Texas what you think. Like, what are people saying in Texas? Like, does Jasmine Crockett have a legitimate shot to beat Paxton? I don't think she has a legitimate shot to beat Cornyn, from what I understand. He's way too popular in a general election. But if not, don't you just got to be smart and try to get at least somebody with a D inside the Senate from Texas? Isn't that more important than standing by your person? But again, I hear what you're saying, though, Kevin. You're like, look, we'll never know till we push it. That was a good point about Obama. Although Iowa was the first stop in the primary, and so he after the first primary, he ended up getting more and more momentum. So it's just a little bit different, but I understand the overall point, which I agree with. Like, you got to stick with your person to the very end. But if the very end is another Republican wins in Texas, have you really won anything? And that's what Tarris is saying. He's like,
I've seen that same thing happen in Kentucky. They put up Amy McGrath against Mitch McConnell and spent $250 million for her to get beat 92-8. So I'm saying, I mean, like I get it, and everybody in the Democratic Party, it was emotionally driven and got out behind her and was like, yeah, she's got a chance to win. And they released the numbers in Louisville, and it came out, the first numbers they released was in Louisville, and it came out she was ahead for about 30 seconds, and then they called the race, and first race called. So
that's Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. I don't know if that's the best.
Yeah, the map ain't even
beat Mitch McConnell.
Look, there are certain places.
Texas Republican, same thing.
Texas, look, there are places where I don't care what Republican candidate you put up, they're just blue areas and they're not going to win. I don't care who you've got, running in certain territories. There's some seats or some offices that you're running for where the map just ain't in your favor. I don't know if that's what we're talking about here in this particular case, where the map is just not in a person's favor for whatever reasons, because people lean more politically toward that. But what it says to me is that if you don't think that Jasmine Crockett can win in a general election in Texas, what you're essentially saying is you believe that she can't attract all Democrats, that she can't maximize the Democratic base in Texas and draw enough independents to beat, because no, I don't expect that any Republicans at all in Texas are going to vote for Jasmine Crockett. Probably won't vote for Tallarico either. So what you're essentially saying is that your belief that she can't maximize the Democratic base. Well, if you're saying that, then that implies that there's some racism and sexism within Democrats in Texas, which is a larger party issue. Because if it's about getting a Senate seat, then there should be, just like they're predicting these blue waves in a whole lot of other places where Democrats are overperforming, she also should overperform in Texas. If she's not overperforming with Democrats, then that says something about, at least in Texas, the racial and the gender appetites of Democrats there.
Yeah, but what about the racial and what about the demographic appetites of Republicans? Like, is James Tallarico well-spoken, Christian background, soft-spoken, white male more likely to get more Republican votes than Jasmine Crockett? Is he more likely to get the Hispanic male vote because he is a man?
Independent vote.
The independent vote, is he more likely to get these demographics because of his demographic? I mean, that plays a part. That's something that Jasmine Crockett, who I like, can't do anything about it. She can't do anything about her gender or her race. She is who she is. But other people are going to look at her and they're going to make decisions based upon things that she can't change, that are outside of policy. And that's just the reality of it.
So then don't, on the other side, if you are part of that group that's going to make your decision solely based on her gender and race, then don't talk to anybody else about critical thinking and emotional choices, because that's exactly what you're doing, because you're not looking at the policy, you're not looking at anything else, but I'm not going to vote for this Black woman. And that's what I want to have an honest conversation about. Don't sit here and throw out, oh, it's the economy, it's all of these other things, as if what you're telling me from jump is that it's not pragmatic to vote for Jasmine Crockett because you don't think she can win, not because of her policies, but because of her gender and her race. That's a whole different conversation. It ain't got nothing to do with policy and politics. That is at the root of the problems that we have in our country. And that is a real conversation that needs to be had. And we need to stop pretending and hiding behind these other things. I'm cool if you want to say that. Just be honest about it. Don't try to act like there's some other reason that you're not voting for her or Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton or whomever. You know, don't pretend. Just be honest. I'm not voting for a woman. I'm certainly not voting for her. Just say it. Just stand 10 toes down on why you're not going to vote for a candidate, but don't make it about these other things.
Yeah,
because we can say unequivocally, yeah, we can't run Black candidates here because they're probably not going to win. We can't run women here because they're probably not going to win. And now we know why, that it ain't got nothing to do with the policies, that we know if we put, then now we got to put more pressure on these good upstanding white Democratic men who want to run for office to make sure that they're representing the views.
I mean, that would be nice if they did a mea culpa and admitted that, but we both know they're not. We also both know that that's a reality of it, which goes back to Tarris's point. That's something that people have to they have to factor in to their decision about Jasmine Crockett. Is, are these other people going to vote for her because I'm trying to get a Democrat in there? And that's just, again, it's out of her hands. Has just like it was out of Kamala Harris's hands. You know, I think she was extremely qualified, one of the most qualified candidates ever, quite honestly. But other people looked at her and projected whatever they thought they saw onto her. She was what they wanted her to be in their own heads, and it most certainly had an impact. So, but I know you guys are really busy. I don't want to keep holding you. Let you get back to your days. I really appreciate it. To the audience, thank you so much. Yeah. To Alandes, to Phil, really appreciate you. We'll be back on Friday. Brand new crew. We'll chop up everything that's going on. We didn't hit we only got to like 2 of the topics, but I'm not surprised by that. It was the two biggest things people are talking about in the Cincinnati and in the country. So,
It's
but
good
thank you so much.
conversation, man. Good conversation.
Oh,
Oh, one thing I do just want to say before we
Sure.
get out of here, man. Again, I just want to say I appreciate, everybody's perspective and opinions. And as I always like to say on this, these are never my statements are never aimed at anybody personally. They're always about the ideas or the topics that we're talking about. So I wanted to say this when Alandes was still on here, but I hope whenever we get it, no matter how passionate it is, I never make any kind of character judgment about any individual. What they say is just always about the topics and I get it,
Yeah, we already know that, but
good conversation, man. I think the stronger sometimes the stronger we disagree or see things differently, I think the better the conversation is, gives people more to think about. But
yeah, I'm not even sure if I want to see. Again, you don't have to say that to me. I already know you, bro. But I understand you want to put it out to the audience, to the ether. Jesse Rowley writes, he will be impeached by a Democratic Senate. I mean, I don't even know if I want Trump to be impeached at this point, Jesse. But maybe we'll pick that up another day. I mean, we did that twice. I mean, even if he is impeached, I'm not even sure if that would be good for the country, quite honestly. But we are where we are. Hopefully, everything will turn out well. I think we're all America first in here, no matter what political party you're on. We all want to see America win. We all want to see hardworking American families win. We're all on the same side in that way. So, we're just testing theories and throwing things out there and sharing opinions. You're always welcome to. And listen, if you go to our Facebook page and our YouTube page, I have a sign-up sheet for people that might want to join the crew. So if you're interested, you don't have to be a podcaster. You don't have to be a former podcaster. You don't have to be an elected official. You don't have to be a journalist. You just got to be, somebody that's got something to say. You can stand on 10 toes. You don't mind being challenged. And you got a good camera and good audio, and we can hook up with you. So if you're interested, please fill out that form, and I'll be in contact with you very, very shortly thereafter. Have a great Tuesday, and hopefully made you think a little bit today. And you don't hate us all too much, and we'll let you get back to your Tuesday.
Hey, Rick Owens, the Kings play this Saturday at home against the Louisville Pros. This is our last home game of the season. It's the first round of the playoffs, though. So we got a home game for the first round, 5:30, Withrow High School this Saturday, March the 7th. Come on down if you want to support the Kings. We can use it. This is a big beginning for our push for the championship. We think we got a good team good enough to win it. So if you haven't seen this year and you want to support for our last game this year in Cincinnati, come on down Saturday.
Sounds like fun. Don't be surprised if you see me and Junior there. Sounds like fun. And Cam is Cam back?
Cam is back. Cam is back just in time for the playoff run. I tell you what though, man, Cam has been the face of our team for the last couple of years. He's been our lead scorer, but we got a young brother, man. He's out of Kentucky. His name is Courtney Ware, and man, he's been lighting it up, man. He's 7th in the league in scoring. He's averaged about 35 points a game, but the last 4 games he's been on a rip, like 40 plus almost every game, a 50-point game in there. Wow. Very talented young man to watch, and so I just wanted to shout him out because he's definitely must see performance.
You got him and Cam. And ballers too. I mean, it's very.
Man, we got some killers. We got some killers. We just need it. We need everybody to show up, man, and play together. And I think we might be going to Atlanta here in a few weeks.
All right. Well, make sure you remind us on Friday when we come back. So that'll be the day before. Just let everybody know. Never been to a Kings game? Heck of fun, man. To bring your children with you. Just by yourself if you want to. Significant other. Get you some popcorn. Sit back and chill. It's always a good time. And it's in Cincinnati. So, all right, Tarris, Kevin, to the audience, thank you so much for being here. And we'll catch up with you on Friday. Have a great day.
Right on.